Oh, whoa. Here we go. We are live. Sorry, I cut that off a little bit short. Had to switch over from one thing to the next, and I just cut out the intro. So that's it. I didn't expect that. There is always something. So I just want to say welcome and good morning to everybody. Today is actually a really great day. Why? Because it is. It's nice outside. Weather's good. People are showing up here into the live stream because we're going to talk about the flippening. And if we don't know what the flippening is, many people refer to the flippening as, let's say, oh, look at this. I don't have my starting intro is deleted. All right, we're not going to be doing the starting intro either as I'm going through all the different options here. I don't know what's going on here, Chip. Somebody's been messing with the someone's been messing with the technical aspects of this streaming platform. So awesome. Ms. C, great to see you here. David D, Carl Lewis. I think I saw Annalise in here last night. David D, there you are. We had some people bouncing in last night. Where's Yeet? There's Alex Yeet. What's up? We had some people bouncing in late last night also, and they were going to be on this morning as well. So let's start out. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Why is it important to talk about the flippening? What exactly is going on? So today we're going to talk about the flippening, meaning in this case, moving away from fiat into the hands of cryptocurrency. So a lot of times we think about the flippening and we're like, well, the flippening means that Ethereum is going to replace Bitcoin or XRP is going to replace Ethereum in the lineage of the success in terms of the numerical success valuation, so to speak, of each digital asset on CoinMarketCap or Gecko, I think it is, whatever. So in this case, though, we're talking about moving away from fiat currency into cryptocurrency, and it's happening faster and faster and faster. But while that's happening, the other topic that we're going to talk about today is really looking at how do we secure our identities and maintain our freedoms on the blockchain, because our freedom is at risk due to the rapid expansion of blockchain. And maybe I should pose that as a question. Is our freedom at risk due to the rapid expansion into blockchain? And that's a great question. That's a great topic for us all to discuss. So think about that as we go. Hey, no camera. All right, what's going on here? Come on, guys. Come on, technical glitches. There we go. Technical glitches. You got to love it. All right. So here we go. New coffee cup today. Actually, this was given to me by my dad a little while ago, and they've been sitting in the cupboard. Nice espresso cup. So if Papa Huddle is out there, we are using these espresso cups, by the way. And in this case, we've got the death wish going on. So that is the coffee. Annalise, who's going to sleep? I don't know. Oh, Alex. Time to go to sleep. Man, you're on the East Coast, right? Or West Coast. Where are you? So here we go. Who else bounced in while we were going through? We got one adult in the room. We always need at least that one adult in the room. And then we've got Chip. So Final Season Realty. Man, we've got some names in here that I haven't seen in the chat before. So really appreciate you guys coming into the chat. Ms. C, I think I've seen you on before commenting. You might have added the XRP, XLM, and VET to your name, but it's good to see. So again, appreciate everybody coming in. So so let's get into this. Let's first open this up and really trying to identify again, what are we thinking about when we're talking about the flippening? So let me open up and I want to go through. There's so much going on, so much news, and you have to figure out, how do you digest the news? How do you see fact through fiction? And that is a really, really important aspect of everything that we're doing in life. I happened to go out last night and we went out to dinner. So it was really interesting because when we talk about fact from fiction, going out, we're up in Delray Beach, and the restaurants were absolutely jammed packed. People out on the streets. As we're walking, we're driving down the main avenue there. People, coming up, and it was really impressive to see what's going on. So again, fact from fiction. So here's the very first thing that's been happening. And when we're thinking about the flipping, again, moving from fiat into cryptocurrency, some of this stuff has been happening right before our eyes because countries that their economies have been facing unsurmountable obstacles. And I'm not talking about in the past couple months, but I'm talking about over the period of the past couple years, where we've seen a demoralization and a defragmentation, or a fragmentation, I should say. Defragmentation would be the opposite, wouldn't it? So a fragmentation of their economy. So one country that I've brought up multiple times over the past couple weeks is Lebanon. And the reason why I think Lebanon is interesting, it's in the Middle East. I think that's interesting. And when we get into, I have a list of countries that have either tested or are starting their rollouts right now with central bank digital currency. The Middle East countries are on this list, and it's not a complete list, but it was kind of like a sample of all the different countries that are getting into CBDCs. So we're going to get into that, and that's where we're also seeing a flipping. But we want to be able to, identify fact from fiction when we look at these CBDCs. And so Lebanon, I think, is really interesting to look at, mainly because, again, the country, their economy was kind of in a meltdown mode. And we need to understand exactly when a country's economy starts breaking down, where do the people go? Where do they go for safety? When we saw, a number of years ago in Cyprus, where you saw a run on the banks, and people, then you go into this panic mode because the valuation of your currency that's sitting in the bank, A, is losing value rapidly, but B, the governments can also then take that money that's sitting in the bank, and they basically nationalize your money, and so that becomes super problematic. So Roddy Ohm, good to see you in today. I saw somebody else bounce in, Ralph Raymond, all the way in from London. Awesome to have you here as well. And then we got one Rough Rican. So let's see here. And so before we get into that, we've got, let's see, David D. Oh yeah, people are craving human interaction in normal lives. Yes, exactly. We're not meant to live the way they're trying to force us into living. Doesn't make any sense. And that's going to change really, really quickly. So let's see, we've got, so David D, Lebanon's a mess. The government faces protests. Their central bank head is at odds with the leader. Let's see, hasn't been shuttered, and people protesting in the streets. And I believe they arrested the head of the central bank. Somebody was arrested recently. I'd have to go back and identify what his actual role is, but he was arrested. So now here's the crazy part. Now we're seeing the flipping again, and this is probably one of the last countries I would have expected to see this type of thing happen. But it's interesting. So an article pops up. We're reading the article, and I don't doubt that it isn't happening. This was on Cointelegraph, but this was actually a wealth exec is looking at what's going on in Lebanon, and so what we're seeing in this flipping environment is that people are actually moving into Bitcoin instead of their domestic currency, and so it's really interesting. And so you have the counterpoint on the other side, where they're saying, no, you don't want to go into Bitcoin or gold, stay in the currency, stay in the economy. But now what we're beginning to see is that there's more and more movement in the direction of actually taking on Bitcoin. And so that's really interesting, that they want, that their sentiment is that they should move into a store of value, and they're identifying Bitcoin as that store of value. And it kind of makes sense when you start looking at a flippening like that, because where else are they going to put their money when you have an economy that is tanking? And part of this, came from the fact that they removed the peg to the dollar, and so the Lebanese pound had been pegged to the U.S. dollar since so I think 1997 time frame, and so now it doesn't exist. So obviously that really impacts what's going on within their currency, and really impacts what is going to go on within their overall economy. So moving into Bitcoin again, finding a way and a space to secure the value of their currency while their own economy is in free fall. And again, their economy in free fall, not as a direct result of what we've gone through for the past couple months, but has been ongoing, for a period of time. So that's definitely a space where now we're seeing a flippening. So now we're seeing this flippening of sentiment where we need to move from fiat, we need to move over to a digital asset, we need to move over to a cryptocurrency. And notice that it's not a central bank digital currency in this scenario. Here we're referring to moving into actual Bitcoin. So again, they're moving into a cryptocurrency, an actual flippening. And that's important as you look at it in the Middle East, because overall the structure within the Middle East, if you look at it from a political structure, it's typically not going to be as free and decentralized. Although Lebanon, in the past went through periods of time where it definitely wasn't, and then they're trying to recapture some of that freedom again within the country, to distinguish from what happens in some of the other regions, as they've broken away or separated away from a lot of the tribalism and the tribal mentality and conflict. So it's not going to be unique to just Lebanon, and we've seen the same thing occurring in Latin America, as we've seen the same thing in Africa. And so I thought that was kind of an important place to start and to highlight on what's happening now. As we segue and we go over to looking at more on a global scale, and we start looking at these CBDCs. So we want to look at the central bank digital currencies, what countries have been looking at, what countries are adopting. And this is just kind of a mix of countries in here I pulled from different areas. But it's interesting because over the past couple of years, we're talking about in the past 2 or 3 years, we've had some countries that getting ready to adopt, rolling out pilot programs, a lot more in the most recent times. But as of a couple years ago, a lot of countries had adopted the research into central bank digital currencies. But once they go quiet on it, if they say that it's not for whatever reason, they're still testing it. It's kind of us being foolish if we don't believe that they didn't continue their testing, as China said they've been testing the central bank digital currency since 2014. So for 6 years, 6 years as they butted up against the decentralized rollout, because again, in that scenario, they're looking at more of a centralized controlled digital currency, not so much a decentralized freedom-backed expansion like of a cryptocurrency. Kind of makes sense in a central bank environment, in a sovereign environment. If you're going to protect the sovereignty of your country, has to have some centralized control mechanism to it. However, we don't want it to be where they can just fictitiously just keep expanding the number of that digital currency to infinity. Then you have no value to what they're designing or developing, or trying to destabilize their own economy or others. But if we go down this list, and it's interesting because they're from all over. So we have China, Cambodia, Japan, France, Sweden, the Marshall Islands, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, the UAE, Iran, Peru, Canada, Thailand, Israel, the Bahamas, You've got the U.S. has talked about it. I think I left off. No, Sweden's there. Switzerland, I didn't put Switzerland on there. And so this list is compounded. And some of these are, again, countries that were testing in the past. Some of them are in the process of adopting pilot programs right now. A lot of emphasis going into, and it's interesting because JP Morgan yesterday or the day before released some sentiment saying that cryptocurrencies could be a threat to the overall, dominance of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, and a destabilization factor. Obviously, has been a lot of discussion in that direction to really identifying, what a central bank digital currency or what this, the syndrome of the central bank digital currency, or what the after effect and impact will be, on a global scale. What impact will it have on the U.S. dollar? What impact could it have on the U.S. economy overall, or the global economy? What does it mean, from a global perspective, if you have bad actor states that have their own digital currency and are able to circumvent global sanctions? If they're in a bad acting environment, are they going to easily and be able to utilize their digital currency to circumvent, or does it just change the operational side of things? So still, when you have bad actors within, take Iran, for instance, or North Korea, or even China, if China's threatening Taiwan and, threatening land grabs, or currently China threatening Hong Kong, let's say, with new security protocol, where it could potentially destabilize the economic well-being of that province that belongs to China, but it kind of was kept on its own, or destabilizing Taiwan because of their, the I don't know, say theories, but from their belief, from their perspective, the Chinese believe that Taiwan is infringed on their land, and so there's a lot of tension there. Now, if you are able to have a mechanism of penalizing countries, do you lose that mechanism when everybody has their own digital currency? Or if, let's say, China is setting up a regional digital currency partnership, now, can it hold people to more account? And these are really interesting thought processes to walk down, because we really want to identify what does it really mean, as countries start releasing their central bank digital currencies. And again, we're starting to see this conversation, the uptick in the conversation is happening at a faster and faster pace. So that's really interesting. So David, Dubai is one of the 7 Emirates within the UAE, Abu Dhabi, but they are still relatively separate, although they're together, still separate, operating, individually within the regional bloc. But let's see, David D, the Chinese believe Taiwan and Hong Kong are China, and that is different than how the Taiwanese people see it. Exactly. It's pretty messed up that the UN doesn't recognize Taiwan. Exactly. So there's a lot of political, issues. There's a lot, and then it definitely becomes an economic issue. So if China is now going to throw, their weight behind this, and they're going to throw it maybe from a manpower perspective, they have naval threats in the region, potential Air Force threats, so they could use military a threat against Taiwan, but then they could also potentially clamp down on them economically, and then the rest of the world can't say anything if there's a regional control over the economies, or the regional economies through the digital currency. It's going to take a lot for that to happen. Now, as we're looking at this, again, this flipping, this movement in this direction of central bank digital currencies, it's interesting because each country is developing its own sovereign digital currency. And so I also believe that as we start seeing the breakdown within the EU, which is starting to happen little by little. We saw Brexit as the UK breaks out. Now there's potential talk, about, maybe we'll see a fragmentation even with Germany, Italy, Spain, and some of the others. And some of the smaller countries, you take like a Greece, for instance, that has suffered economically and really struggled economically before and during, especially during the EU absorption. There were a lot of issues over in Greece. But imagine a breakout. You take some of these smaller countries that have been absorbed in, or some of the Eastern European bloc countries, they break out with their own sovereign digital currency, get a little bit more independence and control over their own outcome, but yet they still need some cooperation. So where you need regional cooperation, which is what China has been attempting to do, like with the Belt and Road initiative, where they're working with 70 countries and really working towards trade agreements, economic cooperation, development. But at the ultimate level, you have one main centralized power that's trying to dictate and control that economic environment. So that's part of what we could see with these central bank digital currencies as well. The one commonality between all of this is that in order for these countries, these sovereign currencies, then to transact with one another, they're still going to need all of the rails, and they need that common solution that will allow for the conversion of their one sovereign digital currency to another sovereign digital currency, hence the RippleNet solution, hence the rails that Ripple has been laying all over the world with banks, whether it's in Dubai, in Qatar, in Kuwait, in Saudi, India, wherever they've worked with different banks, and laying the rails, allowing for the transaction to occur, whether it was going to be fiat or digital. Digital currency makes a lot of sense as it simplifies, overall in this kind of digital environment. So, I want to shout out to one Rough Rican. Appreciate that super sticker. Look at that cool cup he's got there too as a logo. That's really awesome. I don't know why I've got this this mode up here. Let me go through here. I'm not sure why why it's branded in that mode. Not happy with that mode. Hang on a second. My whole thing has been reset over here. Let me go through here and see why that happened like that. Let me take this one. All right, I like this one better. Let me go back over here. Let me see how that one looks. Oh, there we go. I know I prefer that one. I don't know what you guys think. Just looks a little bit more controlled here. All right, I'm just looking at the next comment here. Let's see here. All right, David D, man, throwing a lot up here. The Central Bank of the UAE is in Abu Dhabi, which sets monetary policy for all Emirates. The dirham is pegged to the US dollar. Interesting. Yep. So that was similar to what was going on with the Lebanese pound, also pegged to the US dollar. No more. They removed that that peg. So let's see here. Oh, look, I saw Coining 203 XRP popped in here. I missed that. Good to see you bouncing in here this morning as well. And then I saw David D. You said something else here. Here we go. Wanted to bring this up. Moving into BTC is easier than physical gold. Countries in turmoil currency decline fast. Even Turkey had a 30% correction last year when there was uncertainty, and even BTC is volatile. It's definitely 100%. Bitcoin is definitely volatile. The question is where that's a good point, because that's something I wanted to bring up, was really the volatility of it. The idea of, moving from, if you're moving from your currency, which is already lacking in stability, that's super volatile, and then you're moving into a cryptocurrency, also volatile, but you feel safer in that cryptocurrency than you do in your own platform or your own currency. Interesting, so, but here, now we have this idea that countries around the world are quickly, looking at the digital currency. And so there was an interesting article that came out, and this was in the Foreign Affairs magazine. If you go to foreignaffairs.com, and this was their latest issue that came out for May. This article was actually written May 20th. Interesting title, because the title of it was, "Could China's digital currency unseat the dollar?" Now, they talk a lot about this, and I was kind of digging through this article, and they brought up some really important points. Again, when we're thinking about this flipping, this shift from fiat over to digital currency, they brought up some scenarios, as I was kind of hinting towards, which is, if you have, bad actor states, let's say, and when we talk about a bad actor state or a rogue state, let's take Iran, for instance. Now, you could have your own perspective on how things should work in a global environment, or, in this world where we should have some form of coexistence, and we could agree or disagree on, the U.S. economic policies and political policies in different parts of the world, and the changing policies that the U.S. has had due to the changeover of administrations every 4 to 8 years, and how that impacts our politics regionally and globally. However, if you take a bad actor state, North Korea, for instance, which specifically singles out and threatens their neighbor, threatens South Korea, has specifically sought to attack their southern neighbor, and has specifically sought out to develop weapons in order to threaten others in the region. Now, Iran has done the same thing for years and years and years. We saw a lot of tension when we saw the proxy wars between Iran and Iraq. It was a proxy war. Why? Because it was a proxy war at that time of the U.S. and the Soviet Union that chose sides, and you had the two combatants on the field between Iran and Iraq. But you saw a lot of issues, obviously, from a political perspective. Now, Iran, over the years, developing, especially in more recent years, singling out specific countries and specifically stating, as part of their political agenda, the destruction and annihilation of certain countries in the region. Now, that causes a lot of issue when that becomes your primary policy. I call that a rogue nation, when your goal is the destruction of another country. Outright, they say it on a regular basis. And so that becomes now a rogue nation developing nuclear weapons and other weapons, that's going to not just, create an imbalance, politically, but it's a threat. So now, how do you deal with a rogue nation? So in this article, they're talking about moving into a digital currency environment. We saw this with Venezuela when they created this fake petro a couple years ago, and they tried to force countries to utilize the petro to buy their oil. But here you have a scenario where Iran had already been looking at developing a digital currency in order to circumvent sanctions by the U.S. and the global bodies on how they shut down the utilization of SWIFT in order to move funds to buy or sell product, mainly to sell oil, and to buy other product and goods. And so trying to utilize digital currency to circumvent a global sanction that is placed on the country. So let's say China, and Russia, for instance, let's say they don't care, maybe, that the rest of the world has an issue with Iran. Let's say Russia wants to sell Iran weapons. China wants to buy gas from Iran. The rest of the world is saying, we don't like what they're doing, we need to shut them down. But now these countries are finding mechanisms and ways to circumvent the global sanctions, the will of the global body. And again, regardless of what you feel about anything else, use this as an example. But so now you have this mechanism in place, or do you? And so that becomes a major issue. And so that's something that this article really dug into, and we're seeing the same thought over and over and over again, that if China has the digital yuan and they're trying to have more regional influence, they want to coerce the other areas within Southeast Asia and maybe even like Taiwan, and they want to single out certain countries to place more economic consequence and toll on those countries in order to leverage their influence at a much greater level. And it becomes, detrimental globally when you have a centralized communist country, or you have, countries like over in Iran that want to, develop nuclear weapons and are not just developing them, but are outright threatening others within the region of destruction. So do you take someone at face value to say, I'm going to destroy you, and I'm going to, I want to annihilate you off the face of the earth, and as a result, I'm going to develop nuclear weapons to do that. So you have to think about the consequence of what that means. Now, so with everything, there's always an action and a reaction in every scenario, but we have to figure out the base purpose of the development of the digital currency and why maybe some countries want to move faster in that direction. The question is, with China now, interesting, utilizing this black swan event that we're now to kind of catapult their economic ambitions through their digital currency regionally and potentially globally. Now, was one of the purposes behind this, it started happening before all this happened a couple months ago, because one of the impetus of China really announcing the release of their central bank digital currency was Facebook and Libra announcing that they wanted to come out, and here's their solution that they announced in front of Congress. And it's interesting because it was at that moment, and this article pointed out as well, but it was at that moment that China came out and said, well, we have our own digital currency that we've been working on for 6 years, and we're getting ready to roll it out immediately. Now, what was one of the things that Mark Zuckerberg and some of the others had cautioned of that in front of Congress? They said, if we don't get our act together, United States, stop dragging your feet in Congress and focusing on ridiculous things that we see them focusing on, instead of focusing on global economics. We see those in Congress had been sidetracked, focusing on fake impeachment hearings, the FBI trying to cheat their way to convictions, all this stuff going on. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, here's the US playing checkers, and the rest of the world is playing chess and outmaneuvering the US for years. And we're not talking about the past 3 years, we're talking about years, right? We're talking about 8 years, 12 years, 16 years. China has been slowly moving in a direction, outmaneuvering the US at every step. And we saw multiple administrations that allowed the theft of copyright material over in China, as we saw this ramp up production within China. Now, they had their own initiatives over there. And so now we look at the tensions so as we have this flippening in the digital currency space, we also have other ramification of what can come of it. So good and bad, there's always going to be an action and a reaction. We have to be very cognizant of all of these elements, as we move into this space, because with an action and a reaction, it could be good, it could be bad. We just have to be very aware and understand that as well. Now, what's interesting though is that as I look through this, and again, I say, okay, here's China. This is an article. This is a foreign affairs. I said, these guys, man, they're right on as far as they're drilling down in this article. They're talking about all the things that I've been thinking about, and I've been talking about as well. And it's interesting. They're talking about the Belt and Road Initiative. They're talking about what China could do as far as their POSs, their point of sales, their ATMs, mobile apps, the infrastructure, all these things that they could influence not just globally, but more regionally, the things they can influence regionally. But then they talk about SWIFT. And so they start utilizing SWIFT as an example of how, from a global perspective, whether it's the US or whether it's another, it's a global body as a whole, can help kind of control the overall movement of a rogue, thought, or the penalization mechanism globally. If we're in this global world that we're all working together in some fashion, there's also laws and rules and regulations that people need to kind of abide by, and then there's gray areas, and you guys get it. But if there's going to be a sanctioning mechanism or a penalization mechanism, and some people are trying to circumvent. Now here's, let's say China or Iran that want to circumvent the global bodies from the existing type of currency mechanisms, and whether they're going to utilize, and they get cut off from SWIFT. But what is China trying to do with their influence regionally? As they're stifling Hong Kong from a security perspective, they want to shut off and stifle Taiwan. That's their objective. They want to control the other countries in Southeast Asia through their currency initiatives. So is that a sound objective that the rest of the world body can sit back and say, no, whatever, that's fine. Oh, but the U.S. with their reserve currency and the influence that they peddle, and that's caused so much damage, other than the fact that the U.S. has always been there in two major world wars, and still, risking lives and economics, in order to push an initiative of freedom against, you had the Soviet Union, you had Nazism out of Germany. You had, with World War I, the different threats, and so there are all these different things that have happened over time. We had destabilizations, over in the Middle East, and there are obviously a lot of things. It's not black and white. There are a lot of other, again, actions and reactions. If you do this, whether it's justified or not, there's always going to be a reaction. It doesn't matter if it's a justified action or an unjust action. There's going to be a reaction, and people are going to see it one way or the other. Things are going to unfold as a result, good or bad. It's just, that's the nature of it. But then as we look at what's going on with China and this discussion of why China now moving in the direction of this flippening of this central bank digital currency, and what impact is that going to have regionally and globally. And so you have to look at that. But I think it's amazing because, not just to keep pushing forward, but now here again, the U.S. for a period of time has been playing checkers while the rest of the world is playing chess. Why do I say that? Because regardless of the political foundation of China, they've been moving rapidly into the direction of quasi-blockchain centralized digital currency, whether they're using the DLT, but you see a steady embrace of blockchain technology over there, whether for good or bad. And that's the other part that we're going to talk about a little bit here, which is the embrace and how do you defend and protect your security within the blockchain space. And we'll get into that in 1 second. So Ralph Raymond, this is interesting. And Ralph being over in the UK, it's interesting too. The UK, Hong Kong was, I forget exactly what the exact terminology of what was, as a province or a protectorate of, the UK was a protectorate of Hong Kong, but and then it moved back into the hands of China. But Hong Kong will likely be the fall guy in all of this. They will stand no chance against the might of Beijing. It's a sad world we live in, but we need to face it as a reality. Great statement. That's a really, really great statement, because that's what's happening. We have to look at it from a reality perspective of what is going to be the impact, what is the end goal of China by heavily influencing what was a successful economic area. Now they're trying to establish more political dominance and influence, and if there's opposition, meaning someone's outspoken, they're subject to arrest. So we're not talking about a free democracy. We're talking about, they do peddle in capitalism and growth of their economy. However, there's a centralized political communist element that doesn't really jive with the freedom of the economics, as we've seen lately, where we see the nationalization of certain countries over there. So I think it's really important, that we look at that. Now, here's Raymond, Ripple, smart to be setting up offices in China. Yes. And so this is also important. So again, this gets back to, forget about the political consequence, but the fact that, we're seeing the central bank digital currencies roll out, the rails, the communication, the transaction. Even if you have China heavily influences Southeast Asia, they still need to move that currency to Europe. They need to move that currency to the US. They need to move that currency to the Middle East. They need to move it to Russia. China will not overly influence any of those other regions with their own currency. There has to be a transactional mechanism. And if it's Ripple, because they're, the first actor on the ground, really building out the proper rails, interesting. So now from the US playing checkers, we've seen the Token Taxonomy Act. They're looking for mechanisms to get some normalization, but then you have the Fed, you have other entities within the US that are pushing the US into the checkers game, not allowing them to participate in the global game of chess. However, we are seeing more and more legislators that are coming forward, and we had another one. This was on CoinDesk. They wrote this article. It's interesting. A couple days ago, that was on the 20th as well. U.S. House Rep Brett Guthrie, he's been on some of the other bills before, but he introduced a bill calling on the FTC to survey the prevalence of blockchain tech across industry, government, and the globe. Interesting. This is HB 6938. Pretty much dead on arrival, I have to say, because he has no co-sponsors on the bill. He brought it it was referred to the House Energy and Commerce Committee. That's a good place for it. But if you have no co-sponsors in a House that's predominantly controlled by the Democrats, and you don't have a Democrat on the bill, you're not going anywhere. So we talked about Cambodia, wanting to launch. We talked about all these other countries, interesting, that are moving in the direction of central bank digital currencies. And you have Thailand, and you have the Marshall Islands, and Bermuda, and the Bahamas, and here's the U.S. Still not doing anything significant. Yet they're trying little by little while they're focused on other things. So man, I really thought that was really interesting, and I just the theme is, again, this flipping, because article after article after article keeps popping up about central bank digital currencies. There's another website called Euromoney. If you go to euromoney.com, and on Thursday they had an article, exactly this title: coming soon to your e-wallet, central bank digital currency. And they talk about how this issue that we just went through is spurring and furthering the growth of the CBDC space, because people are realizing that, especially as you're starting to see this global crisis, this global economic meltdown, but you're starting to see the need for the digitalization of currency, and there needs to be another mechanism. So the article kind of goes into talking about the idea, but are we looking at the central bank digital currencies from a retail perspective, or is it from a government, like a large institutional perspective? And as it stands right now, in most cases, we're not seeing the CBDC really rolling out to the micro, to the retail yet, and so that's going to be interesting, what it's going to take, for that to happen as it moves in that direction. So, all right, so let's go over this one. This one, I want to just kind of dive into this as we kind of wrap up the hour. So we have like another 15 minutes or so. Let me look over here, see what kind of comments you guys threw in. Nick Theo, great to see you here. Always great to see new faces in the chat. Big homie Roach is in here. Let's see who else popped in the chat. Sometimes the chat is super engaging, sometimes a little bit slower. People are sitting back and listening, drinking their coffee or eating their lunch or whatever they might be doing. So hang on. All the way from Australia. Awesome, man. Always great to see comments like this. Nick, really appreciate you. I mean, here we have, it's almost 9 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast, and we got 40 people spending their afternoon or evening, wherever you are. If you're over in Australia, it's evening. If you're on the West Coast, it's early. But it's great to see all you guys here and see new faces. Make sure you sub. I should have said that right in the beginning. Sub to the channel. Make sure you hit the bell notifier every time we launch a new video. And we do launch a lot of these live streams. We also have the other channel where we're doing shorter theme content. We had some great guests on. Go check out. We did 2 segments with Alex Mashinsky from Celsius. I'm surprised that didn't have thousands of views. Man, I'm just shocked every single day. Some of the content that I'm seeing out on YouTube is garbage, just absolute garbage on YouTube, from people that I would expect, that when I see the number of views they have, I watch the content. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be like awe-inspiring content, super important content. Then I listen to it. I'm like, oh, so that was basically nothing. Why did I just, waste my 15, 20 minutes listening to this garbage, but man, there's so much great stuff going on. Look at this. Twain Berg, man, great to see you on here. This is awesome. Texas XRP just bounced in here, but I love this because, Twain Berg, another person I've never seen in the chat before, all the way in from the Netherlands. Man, that's awesome. Great to see you here. And we've got Patrick Robertson, XRP utility potential untapped, 100%. And that's the rail system. Amazing, what could happen. There's only one asset right now, digital asset, that has full utility in a space and the potential where it's being utilized, even if it's being utilized on a small level, it's being utilized in the ODL and the on-demand liquidity. Super important, super interesting. Ethereum as well in the smart contract environment as that rolls out into business. Incidentally, XRP can be utilized in that environment as well with Codius. So I think that's great. Oh, here's somebody else. Look at this. We're getting a lot of new engagement today. I'm loving to see that. Barbara Taylor, hey, crypto fam from sunny Tampa area. Welcome, another Floridian. We love our Floridian XRP community family. So great to have you here as well. And here we are again. So final season realty, you had popped in before. So great. That's awesome. It's good that you're having, you and your friend tuned in. Great. Awesome to have you on. Danny Torres just bounced in. So this is great. Here we go. I like this. Here we go, Ralph. Indeed, recycled garbage. Keep up the great work. So, all right, let's dive in for this, the last segment. Oh, here's somebody else. Man, it's just like one person after another is awesome. Look at this. We got Joseph Richardson, another Floridian with us today. If you guys are in Southeast Florida, man, Delray Beach was hopping last night. People jammed out there, restaurants packed with people. It was crazy to see. It was good to see. So let's see, who else did I see just bounce in here? We got Stephen Kurt over here. We are the railroad barons of the 21st century. The steam locomotive was useless without the tracks. There you go. XRP is the locomotive and Ripple is laying the tracks. That's exactly the case. We're seeing these tracks being laid, and it's so interesting being part of this day, this time. There you go, all the way from South Florida. We got Chip and I in South Florida as well. So awesome. I'd love to see South Floridians and Floridians in general. Here's somebody else new. Look at this. We're going to get a whole bunch of new engagement. Loving to see it. We're going to replace you, JP Morgan. There you go. JP Morgan, there's a lot. If you guys got to go check out the two interviews or the two segments that we did with Alex Mashinsky. One, is Celsius legit or is it a scam in terms of their interest, their earned interest income on the site? You got to make your own decision on it, whether or not you want to risk your cryptocurrency in a highly volatile space. Do you believe in their platform? Go check it out. Hear it from Alex directly. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate having him on. Same thing. We've had multiple conversations about this idea in general, but Alex will definitely clear up a lot of information if you want to hear it. He was on we just aired it on Thursday, and then Friday morning, go check out the other channel if you guys haven't done it yet. Passion, follow your passion, follow your dreams. Now's the time to reinvent yourself. Listen to Alex Mashinsky. That guy has done amazing things over the years, and that was that other video that we did that dropped on the other channel. The link should be below. Go subscribe to that other channel as well. That was like a 40-minute video, worth every single minute of it, what we discussed over there. So I highly recommend it. All right. So let's see here. Let's get into security, because security in this space is so critical. Hang on one second. Where's my note here? Shoot. No. All right. We're supposed to be doing. Okay. So, all right. So here's what I was thinking now. Personal freedom. So, is the blockchain, is that going to be a theft? And this was meant to be a whole video on itself. And I think I'm going to dive more into it again. I plan on doing this. I'm going to put this over on the other channel. But the idea behind this is that, is blockchain a theft of our personal freedoms and liberties? And the reason why that's important is because now's the time for us to regulate it. And I talk a lot about self-regulation because blockchain is such that it creates transparency. If it's in a decentralized mechanism, it doesn't allow for centralized control or overreach by certain entities. Now, it becomes very important because in a decentralized environment with this blockchain scenario with transparency, responsibility, action, reaction. So if you decide that you want to put all of voting on the internet online, how do you make certain that one person, one vote? How do you make sure you identify that individual? How do you make sure that individual is registered to vote at all? So now through a blockchain environment, you can set it up nationally that all the databases communicate with each other. So if I move from Florida to Washington, then the blockchain system knows as soon as I move, because I've acknowledged now that my residential address is now in Washington, all of the data changes and the data follows me. Now, at the same time, people could say, okay, that's a little bit of an overreach because we are seeing some overreach outside of blockchain. But blockchain, again, could be good. It could be a way to maintain our personal freedoms. The base core concept of blockchain, of Bitcoin, was to escape the erosion of our freedom. So we have to look at, as we go onto these platforms like YouTube or others, or Facebook or Twitter, they're censoring our content, they're censoring our voices, but at the same time, they're hammering us with ads. They're hammering us with the content they want us to see. Now, it's a free platform, yes, but they're taking our data that belongs to us and they're reselling it to other companies through targeted ad mechanism. Now, do we have ads on this channel activated? It's monetized. Is there a lot of money coming in the channel? No. I think, Chip and I have put probably, 5 times as much money into, making sure that we keep, developing ideas on the channel and making sure we have all the right solutions than we've brought in. But that's okay. That's not the objective, with that. So, but the key is that the right thing? I would remove the monetization because, one of the impacts, and I was watching some videos today, I don't mind the impact of an ad in the beginning. I can sit through it. I'll skip it. I was watching a couple videos from some well-known YouTubers today, 2, 3 ads in the middle of the video. Now, too much. It's just too much. I didn't like it. I had to take the phone out of my pocket. I had to skip the ad and say it was distracting. Maybe one in the middle. I don't even like that. Again, I don't mind in the beginning. I know, everyone's spending a lot of time with this. You want to be able to monetize, but I don't know. It's too much. So we want a mechanism to where we're able to, control our data. I don't want my data to be sold by Google, which they do. I don't want it to be sold by a Facebook if you use Facebook, which they do, or Twitter, or whatever, when they're not supposed to be selling that data. Your phones, your data is no longer secure. Why? Because it's everything that is done is a tracking mechanism. Every app that you use is somehow, monitoring utility and utilization of whatever you're doing in the space. Google is notorious. Everywhere you go, other people's tracking ads follow you. Now, from a business perspective, we utilize that as well. Is it right? Is it wrong? I want to recapture my data, my personal data, my freedoms. And the only way that could potentially be done at this point, as we move forward, is going to be through a blockchain environment that really allows me to hold my data. If I want to come on a platform like Google, and I don't want to have to do it for every single website that I come on. I want to have it one time, interact with my blockchain ID, and then, I get to decide, what I want to do or what I don't want to do. Sorry, the screen was just shutting off. So that's kind of my perspective, on where we're going with, this thought process of maintaining your security in this space. So I kind of ranted in a direction I didn't expect to go in on that, but man, there's all these other comments that kind of popped up here. Big homie Roach on, loving the Celsius. David D, all good stuff. Alex seemed more credible and sincere than others. I haven't seen the second segment yet. Definitely go watch it. It's definitely worthwhile. Texas XRP, what opinion on countries supporting their fintech from the country example like South Korea, VeChain, China? There's a lot of that going on. What's my opinion on that, or just in general? Man, I think, my opinion on these countries. So I think you see a lot of it. I think you have to have the support of fintech coming from the nation state. It's so important. You got to play chess. You got to understand what's happening from a dynamic in the world right now as we're migrating to these digital platforms. I like, out of all these countries here, I like South Korea, but South Korea has already been on the forefront. I like India because India pulled back and retracted. India has a huge amount of potential, what they can offer to this space, because of the population size, but what digital asset can do for the population in India, to me, blockchain tech could be unmatched in history. You have 1.2, 1.3 billion people over in India. You have about 300 million in the upper echelon that could be considered wealthy. You have another maybe 200 or 300 million that could be considered middle class. That leaves you with 700 million people plus, if my numbers are probably off a little bit, let's say you have between 700 to 800 million people in poverty. Now that's, twice the size of the US living in poverty like you've never imagined in your entire life. Now go over there, see it for yourself. You'll see it. It's unbelievable. Now, what does this mean? Because that poverty segment, as well as the middle class segment, could be considered unbanked. Some of the middle class segment could be considered unbanked. As you see in other countries, you go to Africa, same phenomena. The impact of this technology is unbelievable. And so that to me is everything. So when we were watching, Alex on the other channel, you follow your passion, a chance to reinvent yourself. Us in the Western world, a lot of people, we become kind of soft from a perspective of you go to school, go to college, you buy your college degree, you get a job with a degree that you purchased, you invested your 4, 6, 8 years of your life getting that degree. You then get a job, you work, retire, etc. Then you have people that come over here from other countries and they say, look at America, you can do anything you want in the United States. There's a lot of freedoms to create businesses. You can do all this stuff. They come over here, maybe without an education. Some of them come over here with education. I can't tell you how many Uber drivers I met from Venezuela, generals in military or high level ranking people. I've met some politicians. I've met doctors. I've met accountants. I've met driving Uber. So they're over here driving Uber now, and the conversations you have with these people, and but here they are in this country trying to make their lives better. And this is an opportunity. And this is the one thing that I took away when we talked to Alex was follow your passion, because now is an opportunity as kind of you see this economic meltdown around everywhere. But we also have a mechanism in front of us with blockchain technology to create some amazing things. Similar to the 90s with the internet, we're on the forefront, and building in this space is as significant, if maybe even more significant, than investing and learning about it. That was one of my objectives when I first got in, was to find a mechanism. That was a couple years ago, of how to build in this space. Working with Chip has been amazing as we've kind of pushed through, and working on this project on the chain, working on another project that we're hoping that we can maybe one day get traction with. But, my takeaway and my message as I look at, all of this stuff is we all have this opportunity right now to do something phenomenal. So, man, I really appreciate all you guys. I appreciate you guys taking your time coming on here. You know, it's so amazing, you know, that you guys spend your time here. Your comments are phenomenal. Always, you know, absolutely always. You know, Sirdan, it's a Sir John, always great to have you. Finally, normal hours. Every Saturday, I'm committed to be here, 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. live streaming. XRP hodler came in. Man, so many great things here. David D, sorry, many YouTubers are money grabbers. Glad you guys are providing real news and content. Producing 2 and 3 XRP focus streams per day is a broken model. You can't keep regurgitating the same information over and over and over again. Appreciate that, Annalise, going off on that one. So again, seconding what David said. And another new name here. This is so awesome. Brian Motter. Great to see you here. 43 people in the stream right now at 9 a.m. If you guys aren't subbed to the channel, make sure you sub to this channel, sub to the other channel. Go back. If everybody on here, I recommend go back and watch both of those Alex Mashinsky videos. Go back and watch the interview that we did with Jeremy Kaufman from Library. Super engaging. There's a lot of great interviews we did over the past week. We did one with Tachyon. If you guys are technically minded, watch the Tachyon one. That one was really amazing on what they're doing with TCP/IP reInvent. And then last week we did the interview with the guys from FinNexus, a couple guys that are from Beijing, one American guy called Professor K. Go watch that one too. But the Alex Mashinsky, you guys got to watch that one. The one about passion, unbelievable. So Texas, we appreciate Texas XRP. We appreciate you and you, Jeff and Chip, for what you guys are doing for our crypto family. Man, I appreciate that. Always love this. So Michael Otto from the UK. Nice. He's from the UK, went out to town. When I came back home, my phone pop-up said, hope you had a nice day in town. There you go. And then there's so much more of that happening. So, hey, I got to run. You guys are awesome. It was great having you here with us. I really look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Hopefully that'll be tomorrow night when we do the roundtable. But until then, see you next time. How can I get this? What happened?
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.